Save the Semantics, episode 185. It is August 20th, 2022. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Whatever, And probably for the time being, the official Xenoblade 3 podcast, exclusive content, where I talk about only Xenoblade. And definitely not other stuff, and where I definitely don't ramble on for like 30 minutes about stuff that doesn't really matter, but matter to me. I'll just preface, give some personal anecdotes about this past week. This past week's been a bit rough, I'm not gonna lie. It is just, I was just kind of like, just a lot of mental blockades, if you could call it that. Just kind of went through some stuff, so it was a bit tough. And I can't say that I'm completely over those, that kind of hump that I'm sort of in. But it is what it is. It's just sometimes, again, it's just one of those weeks, where it's just kind of tough, and you just kind of have to wade through it and handle things, handle bits and pieces of what you have to the best of your abilities, and just kind of go from there, and then just sort of move on with things. But yeah, this week's been a bit rough. But yeah, again, we're getting through it, so I'm gonna be all right. It's just just a bit of a toughie. Anyways, among other things, I've been playing the game. As I mentioned, at the top, this is the podcast. No, I haven't played a ton because I have been busy with work. So I try to squeeze in at least like an hour or so, half an hour of gaming, like a day. So just because, I don't know, I just want to keep playing it. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it's it's a lot of fun. It's really good. And I have some things that I do want to like just talk about regarding, like, the characters and the stories and the themes and everything like that. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about some music. So JID, or JID, is going to be coming out with an album next week, and I am incredibly excited. It's probably my most anticipated album. I mean, it's been my most anticipated album for a long time. Ever since he like announced that, the album was dropping, which is a while back. And it's finally gonna come out next week. It's been what, 4 years since DiCaprio 2? So yeah, it's been a minute since he's dropped a solo project. He did the Spillage Village album, which came out a couple years back, and he's been doing features and stuff, so he's been keeping busy. But in terms of his solo stuff, it's been a long time since there's been like a full project. So I'm really looking forward to it. The singles that have been dropped have been fantastic. Surround sound was great. And then, last week was Just Dance, or Dance Now. Just Dance. Dance Now, which was really good, and I've been listening to that quite a bit. But I also, I think I might have mentioned this when I was talking about surround sound, but I don't want to over listen to it. So when I do get to the album, like, it'll still be like a good experience, kind of listening to it in context with the rest of the album. You know what I mean? So just kind of keeping that in mind. But yeah, it was a good song. It felt like I don't know. He just he's always like, it feels like he's always finding like ways to do things differently from really anybody else in terms of his like wordplay and his like flow and everything like that. And it's just sort of like fascinating. Like, he kind of reminds me of, I don't know if this is like a great comparison, but like Al Jarreau. He was an artist from like the 70s and the 80s. He was a jazz artist in that sense. He was renowned for essentially using his mouth as like an instrument. I don't know. I don't know exactly the type of music it would fit under. Maybe like scat, right? I think it would be like a scat style uh of music, where he just sort of everything, not everything, but his mouth is essentially like another instrument. And I don't know. I feel like JID, like, he doesn't do like scat, but like the way he raps and the way he just like does these incredibly like intricate like rhyming schemes in itself is like this kind of like instrument. I don't know how else to describe it. And I feel like I can't really think of anybody else that really does it like that, in that sense, where it just feels, I don't know, it's beautiful. That's all I can really say. It's beautiful. And I still, I've listened to his songs, a lot of his songs, just over and over, and I'm still like picking up on, you know, what he said, like the subtext in his lyrics, and I'm like, oh, that's what, I didn't realize he was like alluding to that, um, that sort of thing. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited to hear what's on the album. And then it was a couple days ago, I think, he dropped 2007, which was meant to be an outro for this album, but unfortunately the samples weren't cleared. And that was an incredible song. I listened to that like a lot, like recently. I've just been playing that on repeat, because it's just so, I just love the storytelling. I love the production. I love just the the beat switches. Whenever he introduces like a different time frame, there's like a beat switch from what it was before. The most the most obvious example for me was the high power beat beat switch, which I felt which is so fucking cool, because I love high power. That's one of my favorite hip hop songs. I mean, and that was, I don't know, Kendrick and everything like that, really got me into back in middle school, early high school. This is what really got me into kind of modern hip hop and the artists from that era. And I think it's fascinating to me. It's really not that crazy of a thought, but I think it's super cool that we were both, me and JID, were both listening to that album in that same period of time, and we both, I don't know, it's just so cool that one of my favorite artists has a favorite artist in Kendrick, similar to kind of what I do. It's just cool to kind of think about the layers there, you know what I mean? Someone inspiring something, which then in turn I'm sort of taking in that kind of experience of hearing someone who is a fan of this person who's kind of on this other, who existed and who was creating music before JID even was, and is I'm still a huge fan of Kendrick and everything like that, but I just think it's so interesting how how that kind of relationship works with like listener and artist and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's that was just kind of like an interesting revelation I had. I don't know if that made any sense at all. It's hard to articulate what I mean, but it was kind of an interesting thought that I had when I was listening to that song. And I just love yeah, just the storytelling and everything like that. I think in I wouldn't necessarily say it's a criticism per se. I just think it would be, I think that I would like to hear more of that kind of storytelling from JID, because I think he's remarkably great at just giving these like vivid details and kind of like relating it to something else. It's so good. Hopefully I hear more of that on the album. And even if I don't, like, I think I'm still gonna really enjoy it. Like, everything he puts out is great, man. Even just like, throwaway lyric or whatever, I feel like he's just having fun with it. So it's never a bad time with JID. So I'm really excited for next week, and the album. I have something to kind of look forward to. But yeah, let's talk some Xenoblade 3. I don't really know. I'm maybe halfway through the game, maybe a little less. I know how many chapters are in the game. I don't know if I necessarily spoiled on that, but it's not that big of a spoiler. But I found out how many chapters are in the game. So based on that, I think I'm maybe halfway through, maybe a little more than halfway through. But yeah, I'm loving the game. I don't think I have too much to. I think I'm just, whatever. I'm gonna be just singing its praises for a while. And then once this kind of like honeymoon period has ended, maybe then I'll start to kind of pick some bits and pieces of criticism here and there. I don't know. But I'm really enjoying it. Last time I sort of just gave like a overview on my thoughts on like the gameplay and the story and like that stuff like that. So I'll talk a little bit today about the characters, and I don't know how much I really want to delve into with like the details, but yeah, in terms of the characters, I think this is by far, and I don't know if it's really too close, I'd say this is the strongest cast of characters in the series. I think 2's is excellent. I think Xenoblade 2's main cast is very strong. I think there's a lot of depth, and they're very interesting, and the relations they have with the other characters is very well done. I think it's just the fact that we sort of see our main cast in 3 together from the onset, that we're able to kind of see their relationships develop. So that kind of alone maybe gives a bit of an edge to, over the other games. We see who they are kind of from the beginning, and obviously the developments that they make and the growth that we see in them throughout. And it's really well done so far. I think I'd say my favorite characters so far, and this is kind of because we have been given a good amount of screen time with them for their sort of their background and stuff like that, but I really love Uni and Tyon. I think they're excellent. I think that the contrast between them and sort of sort of the way that they approach different situations make their kind of pairing really interesting to me. Um, I don't really. I think the obvious sort of romance is between Noah and Mia. Like that's pretty clear. In terms of the other two pairings, like I don't see Lance and Senna being like a couple in that sense. I think that's perfectly fine. I think they're like a good, I think they seem to like really mesh well together as like, friends, because they both have like this kind of similar mentality to approaching like solving like issues where it's just like brute force. And then uh Uni and Tyon is like kind of like, I don't know. I could see it kind of going either way. Like they could be friends. They could be, maybe there could be more of like a romantic connection there possibly. But I don't know. Either way, I don't really mind either way. But I just really, so far what they've what they've given me is great. They just feel so alive. You understand a lot about why kind of Tyon is the way he is. Um, he's very methodical and logical and that sort of thing. But he's not just. I think it's easy. I think it would have been easy to just portray him as kind of like the nerd of the group, but there's so much more depth to him and his character, and I love that. I love just kind of he he doesn't really he doesn't really make himself to be very vulnerable. Like he's confident in himself. He doesn't like to make mistakes. He doesn't like it when other people makes mistakes. Um, so he very much is like very laser focused and stuff like that. And the other cast of characters, they bring out kind of a different side to him, and I really like that. They sort of, he's kind of uncomfortable with like affection and that sort of thing. And I can kind of relate to that feeling, and he's great. I really like him. I think he's been given a lot in this first sort of half of the game, and I think that's really great. I'm guessing that the other characters are probably going to get some more shine later on, because we don't really, I think we're still figuring out. We haven't really been given a lot of like Uni, Mio, and Senna's backstory. Not a whole lot, so I'm guessing that we're probably gonna get a bit more from them. And even Noah, like his, he was the first character we were introduced to in the cast, but we're still kind of left in the dark on his character a little bit. There's a lot of ambiguity. He's very interesting, that I'll say. Uh, I really like him as well. I really love the main six characters. I think they're also unique and likable. Even like Lance, who you're sort of you're sort of put off by because he's very cocky, and he it might be kind of hard to like sort of connect with him because he is sort of the way he is, in terms of he's a bit selfish at times, and it does kind of seem like he's putting on a bit of a facade to cover up his insecurities and whatnot. And I think Uni is sort of similar in that way. I think Uni's confidence and her sort of just upfrontness, she's very blunt. Feels very genuine. I think Lance is a little bit more, I don't know. It seems more of him putting on like a persona in that sense a little bit. Like you can definitely see that it's part of it's like he does mean it in some sense, in some ways, but a lot of the times it feels like he might be kind of making up. He's compensating for something else. But I like I like that he's sort of he's kind of has this feeling of, I guess you could call like survivor's guilt of the things that kind of happened in the past, and how I don't know, he struggles to kind of let go of some of the things that kind of happened. And so that's sort of a reason why he sort of puts this kind of thing, puts this sort of face up front. And that can kind of, you know, oftentimes it feels like it's sort of pushing away others, and he sort of wants his own space and whatnot. So I think he's very interesting, and I like him that way. It's just, it's not, not everybody's gonna be kind of like perfect in that sense. Noah is the most emotionally intelligent and mature out of the group, and I think that is, that kind of lends himself to being the leader of the group, and I think that's great. He And it makes sense as to why he's kind of the most like stable in that sense. And they kind of talked about it in like in-game cutscenes, where he's had the most exposure to death and everything like that, and he, as an officer, he has to kind of deal with the fact, he provides kind of the ritual for the passing of soldiers and members of his nation, and the other side as well. He sort of takes that responsibility on. So he, he's right there. He's right there. He's kind of touched the soul, quote unquote, touched the souls of those who have passed, and he's able to really kind of look past, or he looks beyond the surface level. He questions things. He doesn't take things at surface value. He's a very, I don't know, he's very philosophical in that sense. I think that's kind of a similar thing with Shulk and Rex, except he's much more like that from the beginning of the game. Rex, Rex is young. He's the youngest of the protagonists, so sometimes the way he approaches things is kind of like, okay, Rex, I don't know about that. But they all, the main cast, or the main characters of each game, they all kind of share this sort of like, questioning what is known about the world and whatnot. You know what I mean? But I just love the contrast from all of these characters. I think they're all so interesting, and going back to Noah, I really appreciate kind of what he brings to the table. He's just sort of his like demeanor with everything like that. I think sometimes it's to kind of a fault where he maybe is a little, maybe I think Lance mentioned is like, sometimes he's just too nice, you know what I mean? Where it doesn't feel like he feels like this sense of anger and that sort of thing. So we'll see, we'll see where his kind of, how his character kind of deals with that, because I'd say he seems very like sure of himself. He seems to understand himself the best out of all the characters, you know what I mean? And so I think that's very I think that's cool. I think that's very it's a very interesting sort of thing, where I think with a lot of JRPG protagonists, they're sort of trying to figure out themselves through the game. I think the best example of this, where you have a main character who drastically changes over the course of a game is Luke from Tales of the Abyss, and I think he's one of my favorite, like, video game characters, just because of his trajectory. So to kind of see it from the onset, where Noah is he's already like this kind of very philosophical type of character from the very beginning, and just kind of has a very mature take on things. I think is cool. It's very well done. So I'm excited to kind of see where his character goes and where everybody else goes, because I really like all of them very much. But in terms of my favorite, I would probably say right now I really like Tyon and Uni. I think I like the contrast between them, and I also just like them both individually as their own characters. Yeah, I don't know what else I can really add in terms of like the gameplay per se, because I talked like a little bit about it. I don't know, it's just really well done. Again, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's kind of it's kind of it for now. In terms of the story, it's like continuing to develop. There are a lot of really dark themes that are kind of presented. It's a pretty bleak world that's presented in this game, and they really make it sort of, they really try to emphasize that with kind of the off-searing and the flute playing. It's like, oh my god, there's so many dead bodies, you know what I mean? So I think they do a really good job of really enforcing that. And it's a beautiful world. There's a lot of great things. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just blabbering on at this point. So yeah, I'm gonna continue playing it. Right now I'm on chapter 4. I think I'm sort of nearing the end of chapter 4, maybe. So next week, tomorrow I'm probably gonna be playing it quite a bit. I don't know if it's gonna be a full day of gaming, but it's gonna be quite a bit. So I'm gonna look forward to that, and I will keep this podcast posted on kind of my thoughts and feelings of the game, and my enjoyment of it. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today's episode. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.